so much for joining me. I recently got to do a bit of a road trip in the West Coast, starting out in Las Vegas, Nevada. I rented a car and drove to Los Angeles, California, and then up to San Francisco, California, via Highway 1, which is the Pacific Coast Highway. It's a very, very scenic drive, and I was fortunate enough to be able to do it in a convertible, so I was able to catch some cool footage that I wanted to share with you guys. So whenever I can when flying, I try to get a seat near the window so I can take in some extra sights, especially during landing and takeoff, and I was very glad for it this time around. I got to see parts of the Rocky Mountains and parts of the Grand Canyon. I've always wanted to see the Grand Canyon, and it was nice to sneak in a bit of an overhead view along the way. It almost felt like a quick mini excursion before we even landed, which was really nice. The textures here were just absolutely breathtaking. Once we arrived in Vegas, we checked into our hotel, and we were on the 13th floor of our hotel and had a really, really cool view of some mountains in the distance. And when the sun would set, the whole sky would turn pink and yellow and gold. We started exploring some of the hotels on the Strip, including the Cosmopolitan, which had this really cool chandelier bar that you're looking at in the main lobby. And every hotel that we went to, inside and out, was just an absolute spectacle and lots of fun to see. Like New York, MGM Grand, and many others. It's definitely a bright splash of lights in the middle of the desert, which is something interesting to get used to. Plenty to do, including zip-lining over the old Vegas Strip, which is what you're about to see me doing. That was a lot of fun. It took place just over 4 stories off the ground, and it took off from an elevated tower, which was a lot of fun. This is the main lobby for the Venetian Hotel, which is an Italian-inspired hotel and resort. It featured gondola rides in the main lobby. Driving around Las Vegas at night was quite an experience. There was a lot of pedestrian traffic, and you could certainly have a good time walking around on foot, but my suggestion would be to go by car, so you can see a lot more with the time that you have. The next morning we got up early and headed out to breakfast, and then off to the Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area. This is what Wikipedia says about this Red Rock Canyon. It says the Red Rock Canyon National Conservation Area in Nevada is an area managed by the Bureau of Land Management as part of its National Landscape Conservation System and protected as a national conservation area. It is about 15 miles or 24 kilometers west of Las Vegas and is easily seen from the Las Vegas Strip. More than 2 million people visit the area each year. The conservation area showcases a set of large red rock formations, a set of sandstone peaks and walls called the Keystone Thrust. The walls are up to 3,000 feet high, making them a popular hiking and rock climbing destination. The highest point is La Madre Mountain at 8,154 feet. A one-way loop road, 13 miles long, provides vehicle access to many of the features in the area. Several side roads and parking areas allow access to many of the area trails. A visitor center is at the start of the loop road, which is the road you're seeing here. The car we rented for this trip was a dark red Ford Mustang convertible, which was a lot of fun to drive. Next, it was on to Los Angeles via Highway 15. Highway 15 is a major north and south state highway in the state of California, and it connects San Bernardino, Riverside, and San Diego counties. It consists of the southernmost 289 miles of Interstate 15, which is a major interstate highway that extends north through Nevada, Arizona, Utah, Idaho, and Montana, all the way up to the Canada-US border. And it's a major thoroughfare for traffic between San Diego and the Inland Empire, as well as between Southern California, Las Vegas, Nevada, and points beyond. So this felt like a very classic kind of road trip, being that it was in Las Vegas and going to California. So the music of choice for this particular stretch of the trip was classic rock. I started with AC/DC's Highway to Hell, of course, and moved on to System of a Down, Job for a Cowboy, Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, Queen, Guns N' Roses, Disturbed, Dragon Force, and Metallica. Once we arrived in LA, our first stop was to check out the Santa Monica Pier and Santa Monica Beach. We stayed in an Airbnb in Santa Monica, so this was about 5 minutes from where we were staying, and we enjoyed it immensely. I'd never felt so relaxed and welcome and so enchanted by a place as when we arrived here. You could drive right up onto the pier, and the sounds of the wooden slats under the wheels of the car was so relaxing. This is the most unique beach that I've ever been to, because I've never been to a beach that had a Ferris wheel, mountains, and a cityscape in the background all at once. When we arrived, there was Spanish flamenco guitar music, folk music, and rock music all being performed on the pier. The weather was absolutely perfect at 72 degrees, with not a cloud in the sky, and very low humidity. The water was so clear that you could easily see what the sand was doing underneath, and it was very, very refreshing. And there was such a nice, gradual slope into the ocean. Here on the East Coast, the slope isn't so gradual. They get to a certain point where it just dips in pretty deep, pretty quickly. Everything here was just such a relaxed pace, and even with all the tourism and everybody walking around, could still feel this great sense of relaxation and calm. The water slope was so gradual that you could walk in the water and in the foam for quite a while without it getting too high. And the water made this shiny, reflective, mirror-like surface on the sand, which was beautiful to look at, and surprisingly firm and solid to walk on. It wasn't tiring at all. After the beach, we decided to get some food, and we wanted to go someplace that was local to the area that we didn't have access to where we're from. So the first day, the obvious choice for us was In-N-Out Burger. And I have to tell you that I definitely wasn't disappointed. It was definitely the best fast food I've ever had. Santa Monica Pier because it was just amazing, and we could have spent all of our time there and been happy. The next morning we explored downtown LA and were just fascinated by the Angel's Flight, which is a landmark narrow-gauge funicular railway in the Bunker Hill district of downtown Los Angeles. It had two funicular cars, Sinai and Olivet, running in opposite directions on a shared cable and a 298 feet long inclined railway. And it was originally built in 1901. I loved the color choices, and the paint is still so vibrant. Orange and black gave it a very Halloween-y, cozy kind of feeling. And then you had that mixed in with all of the big buildings, which was a nice contrast of old and new coming together and creating something beautiful. And this area nicely led you to this little park with a small man-made pond. That was perfect, I assume, for the locals to come and have lunch or take meetings and just enjoy a peaceful, tranquil, outdoor area in the middle of the hustle and bustle of downtown LA. It was a pretty relaxing scene, and everything was just designed for maximum seating. It had stadium-style bleachers, tables and chairs by the pond. Up next was the Last Bookstore, which was an independent bookstore on Spring Street in downtown LA. And it was the largest new and used book and record store in California. It was founded in 2005 by Josh Spencer, and originally it was a downtown LA loft where he sold books and other things online only, and then decided to focus on books, opening a small bookstore in December of 2009, and they moved to this current location in the Spring Arts Tower on June 3rd, 2011. This bookstore is 22,000 square feet of awesome. One of my favorite things about being on vacation is having the time to select a location for watching the sunset, and the California sunsets, I have to say, were just some of the most stunning I've ever seen. So the location for this particular sunset is the Griffith Observatory. Obviously that's in Los Angeles, and it sits on the south-facing slope of Mount Hollywood in Griffith Park, and has a view of the Los Angeles basin, including downtown Los Angeles to the southeast, Hollywood to the south, and the Pacific Ocean to the southwest. The observatory is a popular tourist attraction with an excellent view of the Hollywood side and an extensive array of space and science-related displays. The admission for the Griffith Observatory is free, in accordance with the will of Griffith J. Griffith, the benefactor after whom the observatory is named. The Griffith Observatory has often been used and referenced in pop culture, and is the inspiration for the Captain Beefheart song Observatory Crest, as well as being used in movies like Flash Gordon, The Terminator, Back to the Future Parts 1 and 2, The Rocketeer, Bowfinger, Queen of the Damned, and many more. The LA night scene was incredibly diverse. It seemed as though every archetype of person was represented, every race and culture beautifully blended together in an urban environment that had a steady feature of neon, which is considered one of the staple elements of design in LA. After a quick breakfast the next morning, we were off to do our own little driving tour of Beverly Hills. Beverly houses, absolutely stunning, beautiful multi-million-dollar homes, and high-end retail stores everywhere. The weather is perfect, the cars are loud and powerful, and you immediately and continuously got the sense that you were surrounded by immense wealth and influence that you would expect to see in Beverly Hills, California. One of the things that really stood out to me this entire trip, and perhaps especially in Beverly Hills, was the blending of agriculture and nature with urban cities, including the fact that there were palm trees that lined almost every street, and many various types of trees, and barks, and limbs, and grass. I often found myself just staring up into the trees and appreciating their different unique qualities and their beauty. This day's sunset location was Santa Monica Beach. Again, most of our time was spent because it was just so gorgeous, as you can see here. And I'm sorry about the quality of this next video, but I just really wanted you guys to see how cool it was that you have this dark urban city completely engulfed in night, and yet on the beach you still had a glimpse of the sun. We took a ride in the Ferris wheel that night, which provided really, really cool views of the city and all the flashing lights. It was like a living, breathing rom-com fairy tale. The next day, it was off to the longest bit of driving that we did, which would be along California State Route 1. Many of you are probably familiar with the fact that there were pretty massive wildfires going on recently in California. In fact, some of the worst fires that the state has ever seen. Well, we were in California at that time, and the fires were in Malibu and in other parts of the state as well, but this particular day, in order to stay on California State Route 1, which is the coastal highway, we would have had to pass through that area. We were a little unsure if we were going to be able to, or how safe it was, but we stuck to the plan. We started to get a little bit nervous as we looked at all of the cars evacuating Malibu. It seemed like we were among very, very few people that were heading closer to the fire. I do have to state, first and foremost, that I do not encourage anyone to drive near the area of a wildfire. I would not recommend anyone put their lives in danger. What you have here is simply us not knowing exactly where the fire was, not knowing exactly what roads would be open or closed. Now, the highway was open the entire way. It was not shut down, and so we kind of took that as a hint that maybe it was safe to pass through the way that we did. But I'm certainly not advocating any kind of storm chasing or fire chasing, simply for the footage. That having been said, it was pretty impressive. I don't know if impressive is the word I'm looking for. Maybe terrifying and beautiful. They look like very deep, thick cloud formations, but in fact it was a completely clear sky day, and that's all just smoke from the wildfires in Malibu. As we went along and we got closer and closer, the air quality started to change, and we had to leave the top up on the convertible and just recycle the air that was in the car already. And when we reached the end of the evacuation line in Malibu, things started changing. The air went from clear to off-white to a thicker yellowish brown. And at this point, if you look closely in the camera over the next few shots, you'll be able to see that it was actually raining ash from the mountains above. Again, I don't recommend this type of thing to anyone. I don't recommend driving in an area like this, but it was quite stunning to see. At this time, I want to offer my sincerest condolences in a moment of silence to everyone who was affected by this, be it damage to home and property, or much worse, the loss of life. Now, do bear in mind that this is the same morning that you just saw a moment ago that was bright and sunny, and that weather-wise, it would still be that way if not for the wildfires. And this footage is exactly how it was captured. No filters have been applied to dramatize or exaggerate the way things were. And the further we got into the smoke clouds, the deeper into the area where the wildfires were taking place, the darker it got. At this point, we could see that there was a break in the smoke, and that we would reach normal light soon. But the day is darkest just before dawn, to quote Harvey Dent. It was quite intimidating driving around through the mountains in such deep darkness in the middle of morning. And yet, once it was over and we had driven past all of the smoke, the clouds, to continue on our journey, we had no fear that it would become beautiful sunny California once again. I want to take the time to recognize the strength of the citizens of California and the brave firefighters who sacrificed so much of their time and energy and effort to assist everyone out of this situation. Just being in the outskirts of it was quite intimidating. You can only imagine the type of bravery it takes to be directly involved and to help save lives. It was incredibly interesting to drive through this, but it was also a very humbling experience as well. Once we were finally cleared of the area, it became beautiful sunny California, and we enjoyed looking at the elephant seals that basking in the sun along the highway, splashing themselves with sand. There was lots of natural wildlife in parts of California that we weren't used to. That was quite a nice surprise. And this is a more typical view of the Pacific Coastal Highway, California State Route 1. Sunny skies, beautiful mountain ranges, and the open ocean. Now, if you're into road tripping, and you're into beautiful sights and locations, there's one thing that I'm sure of in life. It's that you should definitely experience California State Route 1, as much of it as you can for as long as you can. This particular day we drove for well over 9 hours, and it felt like 30 minutes because it was so beautiful and so entertaining and just stunning at every corner, every turn. There was something beautiful to see. There was more nature. There were parts of this highway that were so remote and distant from anything else that there was no cell service, no radio service. And it gave you this sense of being somewhere truly wild and free and beautiful. And yet it was such a nice, relaxed pace. The average speed on this road is about 35 to 40 miles an hour to compensate for all the curves and turns along the coast. This made it ideal for motorcyclists, bicyclists, and even hikers to just sort of take in the sights and sounds. And although we tried to make good time, we had to stop at McWay Falls, seen here, which is an 80-foot tall waterfall on the coast of Big Sur in Central California, and it flows year-round from McWay Creek in Julia Pfeiffer Burns State Park, about 37 miles south of Carmel, into the Pacific Ocean. It was just one of the many, many beautiful places and things to see along this highway. You could literally spend days here stopping and taking your time. And this day, the sunset was seen directly from the coastal highway, which offered some beautiful, beautiful sights. Driving here was just an absolute pleasure. We stayed the night in Monterey, and the next morning arrived in San Francisco, with our first stop being scenic and relaxed Pier 39. Pier 39 featured many shops and restaurants. It's a very popular tourist attraction, offering views of Alcatraz prison. Now normally you would have a much better and even clearer view, but the wildfires surrounding the area created a bit of a fog in San Francisco, which usually enjoys much greener, crisper air qualities than most cities. Pier 39, we enjoyed looking at the sea lions that lived there. And they actually migrated from further north in the 90s, but because of the availability of food and the pleasant weather conditions, they've stayed there ever since. And they put these dogs out there for them to have a place to rest and sunbathe. And we enjoyed watching these two wrestle and argue over who got to stay up on this particular block. And every time the smaller one was triumphant, he would raise his head and bark in triumph through all to know that he was the king of that particular dock. It was entertaining. This is the world-famous Lombard Street that features 8 hairpin turns. It's a long, winding road on a very steep incline. Very, very much of San Francisco is a steep incline, as you will see in just a second. This particular road is especially curvy. In the distance is Coit Tower, which we'll see a view from in just a little bit. This street was so steep, along with some others in San Francisco, that famously the sidewalk is not a sidewalk, but stairs. At the top, a classic trolley offered a view to daily commuters. This is the view from that Coit Tower that we saw earlier. That's the Oakland Bridge in the Bay Area, in parts of downtown San Francisco coming up. It was interesting to see the city from above because you really got the scope of how hilly and steep it was, and how much of a grid it is with wide open streets. Erected outside of Coit Tower are different statues and placards commemorating those who had an influence and inspiration in the tower. After Coit Tower, we decided to explore downtown San Francisco and the financial district a little more. The next day, we took a little boat ride through the Golden Gate State Park, which was a beautiful park that featured many different types of trees and different types of birds and ducks and little bridges that are very old and very cozy to travel through. It was a very, very relaxed setting on this man-made lake that I would definitely recommend paying a visit to. Golden Gate Park is just over 1,000 acres of public grounds and is administered by the San Francisco Recreation and Parks Department, which began in 1871 and was put in place to oversee the development of this park. This park is configured as a rectangle and similar in shape, but 20% larger than Central Park in New York, to which it is often compared. They share a lot of similar features, and they both have ponds. They both are very large, both in urban environments, and they're both very beautiful. And of course, no trip to San Francisco could be complete without a view of the Golden Gate Bridge. It's something that must be experienced on your own and is often considered one of the wonders of the world. No picture or video can do justice to the size of this thing. We spent a little time on Muir Beach this evening, and were quite fascinated by some of the local birds and their behavior. They were very calm and relaxed and used to people coming around. And one of the coolest things that we saw were these larger birds that were diving for fish and worms in the ocean, quite successfully so. It was very relaxing just to watch them sort of flock around areas and dive in for food and refreshment. The splashes that they made were very satisfying and relaxing to listen to, and one could sit here for hours just listening to them being triggered. They represented such a freedom, just flying around the ocean and diving in when necessary or desirable. The sun reflecting off the ocean created sparkles that they added to with their splashes. Driving around the area of Muir Beach was beautiful too. It's just outside Muir Woods. We decided to spend our sunset this day on Baker Beach, where we got to see our first coyote we've ever seen in the wild, and another beautiful, beautiful California sunset. Baker Beach has excellent views of the ocean, the sunset, and of course, the Golden Gate Bridge. There were very high, rocky sort of surfaces that you could stand on and get a really nice, relaxing view of the sunset and hear the waves gently sliding in and out. Driving in San Francisco at night was pretty interesting. Most of the streets were actually pretty quiet until you got into the downtown area, which obviously had more hustle and bustle and traffic. The next morning we took in the sights at Dolores Park and decided to make it an outside day of nature and hiking. And to do this, we would go to the Muir Woods, which again I would highly recommend, filled with wild redwoods, both young and old. The park was open to the public, and the air quality was much better than in most of the other places at the time because of all the trees and the oxygen that they produce. Again, one could spend a very long time here and find oneself immensely entertained and immensely relaxed. The textures that you would see on the trees, the wood grains, were just absolutely stunning. Everyone a little different, everyone a little unique. Such great care was taken to reduce the footprint of man in these woods. And back over the Golden Gate Bridge we went, back into San Francisco, to enjoy a little bit more of the city life. An interesting thing that we learned, or at least saw firsthand, many of you may have seen on the internet, was the fact that the divider, Golden Gate Bridge, is movable. That there's a truck that picks up the little individual pieces that you're seeing and can move them over to change the amount of lanes. San Francisco was the end of our trip and where we spent the most time. The restaurants and sights and sounds were absolutely stunning, and it became very easy to see how one could leave their heart in San Francisco. I want to thank you guys so very much for joining me on this trip, for watching this video and supporting my channel. Please be sure to leave a thumbs up and comment down below. I hope that you have a wonderful evening, and thank you again so very much for joining me. Sleep well, my friends. Sleep well.